Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network. And we are back to discuss episode 3 of season 2 of Apple TV Plus's Severance. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined as always by Liz Seiko.
Ooh, what's going on?
And Michael Peniston.
Hello, everybody.
This is our crew. We're here. We're here to talk Severance. We're always excited to talk about this show since it came back. I actually had like 4 people text me this week to either discuss Severance or say, I've heard a lot of good things about Severance. Should I start it? So this is probably like the hottest show in a while on television. Like I'm trying to think. The last show that had this much heat on it was probably The Penguin, but even like I think this is a different level. Like I think that this reminds me of how I felt when we were watching like Succession. Like early on, like I felt like everybody was on Succession. Catching Severance now, season 2. Michael, you binged the show before we even got to season 2. So I want to ask you that first, starting, which doesn't have to do with this episode particularly, but like going from binging the first season to now getting to digest this week to week. Are you enjoying it more on the week to week? How are you feeling about that?
Yes, 100%. I am so happy I binged it. I feel like it prepared me more for what we're getting right now. It didn't prepare me that much. What we're getting right now is crazy. But I'm happy I did it because it was cool to just kind of get all of it in one story, one shot. Where we're at right now, I'm keeping it vague. I really love the show. I really respect how they're not afraid to do things that you'd probably see in like a season finale in episode 3. And so I'm happy I binged it. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I love watching the show week to week because I feel like there's so much to digest and so much to think about. Mm-hmm. Reddit's going crazy over it. Our comment section's going crazy over it. So we love it. But a big part of this episode that we get by the end, and again, this is spoilers. This is a spoiler discussion, so be prepared for that. If you guys haven't watched the episode yet, just go watch it and then come back and listen to our review and discussion. But a big part of this was Mark trying to get a message to his innie from the outside. There's obviously a lot more things that happen, but that's a really big part of this episode. And I'll start kind of at the end and we'll work our way backwards. But at the end of the episode, he gets reintegrated thanks to, you remember the character's name?
Yes, it's Rikabi,
yes. So Rikabi, who we've seen, she's in a lot of season 1.
I think she's in one episode.
Is it just
season 1?
Okay, I thought she's in multiple episodes, but you're probably right. But she was the one who reintegrated Petey, who was Mark's best friend in the office. And after seeing what happened to Petey, Mark was very hesitant to the reintegration process. And that's kind of how our episode ends. Were you surprised that that's kind of where they left us off, or are you excited to see where they're going to go from there?
Okay, so I was a little surprised that we're doing this now because it's only episode 3 and we still have 7 more episodes to go through. But the more that I've sat with it, it totally makes sense because like we need to start seeing where the story is going to go. And the only way for them to progress, I feel like the story is for Mark to start like overlapping in a way. But I'm so interested to see like where we start off on the next episode because, okay, so like reintegration for me, I always thought that it was like getting rid of the innie completely is the way that I took it, at least through season 1 and even up to season 2. But the way that they showed it at the end is like he wakes up on the table. So is it that he then remembers everything that happened as an innie, or like is he like where is Mark going to be? Is he going to be both innie and outie Mark? Is he only going to be outie? Is the innie going to be completely gone? Like what memories is he going to have of working at Lumen? And I don't know. Do you guys have theories?
I think it's to be of one mind. I think that's what it is, but I think it's being able to place like both sides of the mind the opposite of where they've been. So the outie can now have the perspective of what the innie is while understanding everything that comes from the outside on the innie and vice versa. I think it had a lot of repercussion with Petey because I think that part of that process
I think it makes him go crazy.
It's going to make him go crazy.
But so then it's like, because it wakes him up by waking up on the table. So then it's like, does he then have all of the memories of what has been going on ever since he started working at Lumen.
It's possible. I don't really have a theory on it yet.
You don't?
No, I don't. I think
Okay.
I'm more kind of just waiting to see what happens. I think that I heard rumblings online that people said this was a crazy episode. But people were saying that episode 4 like ramps it up even tenfold.
Because
so
the whole thing is there's a chip in him too.
Yes.
So Lumen must know that he's being reintegrated based on his chip, right? Or is the chip just tracking?
I don't know.
You know? I think the chip might just be tracking. But also to your point with it all, I do think that it's going to be a situation where it's going to be him jumping back and forth between like the innie and outie. I do think that coming off of our only example being Petey with this and how much it kind of, how, like you said, we saw him, he was crazy when like by the time we saw him. I don't know if that's just a buildup or if there was like a certain level of you know, the integration that kind of he went through. But I do think that there's probably a level of control that they have after up to a certain point, and then up to that certain point, then it's like not as stable. I don't know, but I do think we're going to see a lot of like how it was at the end of that last scene where it was like jumping back and forth. I think it's going to be a lot of that moving forward. So
based on what I'm reading, it seems that what reintegration does is it's the consciousness of the innie and the outie merging together.
Okay.
So I think it's just going to be Mark understanding all that's happened to him inside and outside of Lumen. But I think I think it probably has an effect on maybe the chip in general. Like the chip can
start malfunctioning.
Yes, maybe.
In some sort of way. Because I'm just thinking of like the first time that he's walking into Lumen and then has to go in that elevator. Like, so does the change not happen at all? Does it kind of happen?
Well, there could clearly be a way to manipulate the chip because Helena's inside.
Yeah.
So, but obviously she's a figurehead.
And then
Lumen.
how quick do they realize that it's outie Mark and innie Mark like flipping when he's inside of Lumen? Because the personalities of the two are very different already. So like if he's outie Mark working at Lumen, I feel like Milchek is going to notice right away and be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking so not chipper and like happy?
At the same time though, I feel like, yes, you're right. They are so the contrastingly different, the innie and outie. But this episode, and one thing I liked about this specific episode, it allowed us to see that everybody is going through their own sort of thing in a different
100%.
way. And so not only that, and I'm happy you brought up Milchik, like, I don't know if we're going to have the same Milchik that we've seen so far by the end of this season.
Forward.
And with all of that, I don't think it'll be as noticeable if he is snapping back and forth. Just everyone's just so right
Consumed
now.
with themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really based on what this episode. We literally get a big moment with every single character in this episode, even if it feels small.
Mm-hmm.
Like the well, we could jump character to character because we're on the topic of it. Let's go to Milchik first.
Yeah, because we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So Milchik gets brought in to a meeting with the board for a powerful scene, man, like a crazy scene in which the board presents him with gifts, canonically reimagined photos of Milchik as Kier, which is strikingly
weird.
So
weird.
It has such a racial connotation.
It does, yeah.
And it has such a dude. I mean, that again, the acting in this show is so like top notch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it Jasmine?
Natalie.
Natalie. I'm sorry, I thought it was Jasmine for some reason. The scene with Natalie and him, and like just the look on her face and the fear that like is radiating in her smile as soon as the board is off the call is like, oh my God.
Well,
like,
even just throughout the scene, like that is acting 101 of how to have so much more happening than just the text that's written in the script. Like there is so much eye communication going on, especially while they're just like waiting for the board to like say something. Her as an actress, I think she's just really good with playing like that middleman who is also low-key terrifying, but then also like you're like, is she terrified inside of like what's of the company that she's working for? Because she looks scared all the time.
It had like Get Out vibes.
Yeah.
I can see that.
What'd you think about it, Michael?
I love that whole interaction. I just love how they're able to so quickly change how we can view a character, or at least are theorizing with a character of what's to come. And for me, it was specifically Milchek in this moment, just because I don't know. I feel like him and Cobell have both been playing on this sort of like on both sides of the fence, and I do think that at some point it can't just be the four of the severed crew. Like at some point it needs, and we're seeing them grow and like these people join, but at some point it needs to build. So it would be so cool if Milchek joined them in the end. But Natalie I as well is just so interesting, and I feel like even coming off of season 1, the episode where, and I want to ask you guys this as a question. We had the whole moment where we first met Helena and like Natalie was there in season 1. Do you guys think that Natalie's also playing a similar role as far as Helena, where it's like, oh, are they both like she has more control than others, or do you think that Natalie's like in the severed sort of world as well?
I don't know if it's either. I think she's more on the same keel as like a Milchek at this point. I think that Milchek obviously has power. But I think that at the end of the day, I do think there's like a weird racial connotation with what happened in that room. And there's like an understanding of like what that looks like. Like even when you look at like all the leaders that came before them, like there's no black leaders. Like I think there's something to that, and the look that's on their faces when they're having that internal conflict. I definitely don't think she's severed, because I think her personality is the same. It definitely seems the same when she's outside of Lumen talking to Rickon. And I think that they've done a good job of showing a stark difference, especially this season, of the innies versus the outies. They're entirely different. All of them are. And I think that's why it's interesting, not to jump to this point, but like kind of going off of just my thought process on Natalie. Like John Turturro's character is the only one who has an inkling of an idea that something is off with Helly. And we talked about that a little bit last week and what that could mean, because I think that there's still a lot to kind of go through with his character. But I think she's a part of this under trapping too. Okay. With Milchek. I just don't really know what's going to come of it. Okay. Like there has to be more to the hierarchy too. It might not happen this season, but like we're going to get more of, whether it's more of Helena's father or even more members of Kier. Like, I don't know where they're going to go, but like.
Well, do you think there's an actual board, or do you think it's literally just Egan?
It could just be Egan.
I think it's just Egan.
Yeah, it's probably just Egan.
Yeah.
Because like they don't refer to any other name or any other like type of superior figure. Even like dealing with Cobell, it's all Helena just like dealing with it. So there's like nobody else except the random bodyguard.
Did you see the theory online that the bodyguard looked like one of the generations of Kier?
No.
I didn't see that either.
Yeah. Which they were saying could go along with the cloning part of it.
Okay. And you think...
I'm not saying I believe in that theory. I'm just saying I saw it online.
Okay.
So they could be watchdogs, essentially, throughout this whole process.
Like, they're clones of Kier?
Of past, like remember when they go into the room, I forget what it's called, but like it shows all the former leaders of Lumen.
Yes, yeah.
And they're all like taxidermed, like they're giant sculptures. Yeah. Like one of the sculptures in that room, they said is like looks like a lot like the bodyguard.
And do you think that's what caused Cobell to then be like, I'm out?
It's possible, because they do shot reverse shot where they show her and then him looking at her and her having like, nah, I'm good on this shit.
Yeah, because that was
she's like, I don't want anything to fucking do with what's about to happen.
That was such a weird moment for me.
There's a lot of weird moments in this episode.
No, this episode was weird. Like they
wanted great, but so
great,
weird.
Beautiful. We loved it. But there was I was hoping for like a little bit more answers than they totally gave us. Yeah. But they really were just like complete open-ended scenes of like, oh, you guys gotta wait, because that was one of the moments that I was like, why is she leaving if she gets to then go talk to the board? So what? Yeah, that was one of the moments that I was like, I don't understand why she's leaving unless it has to do with the bodyguard. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think that I think the whole nucleus of this episode, like if you could describe it in 2 words, was conflict and realization.
Mm-hmm.
There's conflict with every character going through something, but almost every character is having a realization about their next step of what they need to do, or figuring out something that they might not have known that was essential to their story going forward. Like, I don't know why I'm forgetting his name now. Irving. When Irving goes and sees Felicia, and she sees his drawing, that they're having a grand old time talking about wonderful Bert and all the great, and she's like, how do you know what the exports hall is?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's sketchy shit. Like, the fact that, like, and it's played perfectly. Like, it's played sinisterly, and it's played like, what is there to know of it? Like, what is this? Like, what do you mean? Like, that's a realization for Irv. Then you have Dylan's character.
Oh, I agree.
Zach Cherry, this was his episode.
Yeah.
Dylan just realizing, like, that he's a lowlife, like, outside of Lumen, and just the manipulation of what Miss Huang and Lumen is doing, giving him that opportunity to meet his wife. Like, there's so many realizations for all these characters. Even in that moment, which I thought was, this is what I thought was actually weird, and it's played weird in the edit, is when they're walking to the goat room, and like Mark kind of like corners Helena, and they're like looking at each other, and like they're both like, do we want to kiss right now? And they're like looking at each other, and they're like weirdly smiling, but then at the same time they're like, can I trust you? It's like a weird.
I loved it.
I did too.
I did too. I loved it because there is so much happening of, clearly it's Helena, first of all. It is not Helly. And there was a split because she doesn't know their relationship. That's why that moment was weird, because she has no rapport with him at all. So she doesn't know if, like, okay, is the kissing thing like who really
a consistent thing?
Yeah, like, is it, well, I think she knows it's not a consistent thing because she's clearly watched them, but she doesn't know what that chemistry actually is like. So is it like coming from more from him or coming on her end? And then I feel like there was one slight moment where Mark was even like, why are you being weird? And then that's when she was like, oh, fuck, he knows that I'm being weird. Mm-hmm. Now I got to like give him like the eyes right now to try to get him to like get back on board. And then Mark's just like so infatuated with her that he's just like, oh.
Do you think there's any part of her after her seeing what their relationship was on the inside that she feels anything for him? Not saying like it's overt, but like there's something in her that feels like I have a connection to this person.
I think that she was interested to see so I think she was interested to see that Helly was forming a relationship with him. And then she was like, I want to know if it's also that I can feel the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that she is. I think that she's already just like attracted to him. But there's just so much like on top of it too of, yes, she might be attracted to him, but then she also needs to figure out what happened, because they still don't know like what exactly happened that night that they all were out in the outie world. So I think that she's playing like double-edged swords of personal gain of figuring out if she really is interested in Mark, and then also like running her company.
Yeah, that's fair.
Did
you want to touch on the Helena stuff or the Dylan stuff?
I could touch on both of those because I loved both how they played out both these characters in this episode. With Helena, 100% you're right. It is Helena. It is her. Another reason why I feel like it's a little bit more obvious. If you pay attention, I feel like to Helena versus Helly was so, and a part of that came with not knowing what was going on. There was more of like an initiative in her, you know what I'm saying? Like
100%,
right? Like it was, and part of that is what created the Mark that we see right now, which I think Helena might have that sort of attracted feeling to like the Mark that we see now, but I do think it's only because of what Helly created in him. And so I don't know, but that moment was for sure a great moment. It was awkward. I loved the awkwardness in it.
It was so long.
It was, yes, it was
so long. But no, I know what you're talking about, because even when they eventually find the room that they had seen the goats in, and then they see the small hallway, she's like, "You're gonna go in there?" Versus Helly totally would have been like, "Get out of my way! I'm getting down there. I'm gonna go figure this out."
Right?
And she's like, "You're gonna go down there?"
Right?
And so it's Helena.
It is.
If I'm wrong,
No, I
don't think so. But like, it's definitely her.
Yeah,
it is.
I think you're totally right.
100%. Yeah, no, definitely. That whole moment, the whole goat moment was crazy. Yeah, and Mark is just more of the leader here in this situation for sure. As far as Dylan's story, to this all, I really enjoyed the moment that we had between him and his wife. I feel like his wife is good. I feel like there could be a cool little like side story that they do here, where especially with his wife is so interesting of a character, because you can tell that already the way that she views this innie husband and the way that she views her outie husband are completely different. She said "I love you" to him innie, but didn't say it to the outie version of him, which says so much already.
Yeah.
And it's like it could almost like create this thing where like with these visitation things and this now ability that he has, like could it create like this thing where like she's almost like cheating on like his innie with himself? I don't know. I really like that whole dynamic, and then also just Dylan like taking it. I always felt like with season 1, he was important, but he was also a comedic relief to a degree. And so to had like more substance to just him as a person, and to see that like, oh, not only is there more to his character and his story, but also like being severed in a way is either really fucking up these people's outside lives, or it could potentially save their outside life in a weird sort of way. And so I don't know, because like Mark, like he could find his wife again, you know what I'm saying? Like this could save now Dylan's relationship. Irv could find out. There was like a whole bad story with Irv I feel like we're not getting, and like something could be, I don't know, there's a lot.
We still need a lot more with Irv.
I want to just about Dylan. I totally think that there's going to be like a weird like triangle relationship going on, because why then on the outie world, when outie Dylan asked his wife like, "Oh, well, how was it?" and she was just like, fine, like literally gave no details. And also, I think it takes on like that level of like, I also thought they were lying. I thought that she was just some random person. I didn't actually think that it was his wife. Yeah. So I was happy that they actually showed us that it was her. But I mean, it's got to be weird, like seeing your husband, but it's not
an entirely different version of who he is.
But in a way, it may be like a better version of him than the one that she sees on the outside world. But then physically it is him, so then of course she's like attracted to the guy. I don't know, it's crazy. I think that's mind blowing.
My biggest thing is the repercussions of what it could mean for the group, because Dylan was infatuated with perks when they were like
shitty.
Yeah, like waffle parties and finger traps. Like now he gets visitation with this woman that's telling him that she loves him, and he loves his family dynamic that he's seeing outside. He's seeing only the good parts of what exists outside of Lumen. And again, I agree with you. I think it was great that they showed the outie dynamic, because it's like clear that as soon as he comes home from work, he just throws on shitty clothes, sits on the couch, and watches the kids when she goes to work.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is he bringing to the table at this point? And she even makes the point to be like, like you couldn't really keep a job before this. Like you're like. And
she's like, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Like I'm proud of the work that you're doing down here.
Yeah. And
mine.
Yeah. Like unless there's a reintegration coming with him, like that, the two sides of him this season is going to be like fundamental to what happens next. Because like you even see it in this episode when Irv is like, "You want to come with me?" And he's like, "No, I'm good. I'm just going to keep doing my work." Like he knows,
because he was motivated to meet
get
his
to the
family.
Yes. To get
so what
to
you think that eventually it's going to lead to like integration for both Dylan and maybe even like Helena?
I don't know. I'm saying that I think that unless reintegration happens with Dylan, that's going to be a major sticking point on this overall plan with them as being like, think about all the loose ends we have right now. We have Helena who nobody is aware is Helly except for Irv.
Maybe Irv. Maybe
Irv is an inkling.
He also could just not care. He could just be like, you know what, not my problem.
Yeah. And he's like, because Irv's motivations are always doing whatever he needs to do to get closer to Bert at the end of the day. So you have Irv infatuated with Bert over here. You have Helena being in the office, and the only one that has an idea is Irv, who's preoccupied with other things. Now you have a Dylan that's more motivated than ever to do his work and not get away from his desk, even though the reality is his work means fucking nothing. It's Mark's work that means everything. And then you have Mark now, who's reintegrated. So that's why I think episode 4 potentially too. There's so many things that are at play right now. Like, I feel like you never really know what's going to happen in Severance, but at the same time, like right now, there's so many balls in play that we have no idea what the hell's going to happen with any of these characters. They all have their own individual motivations, but then it's also surrounded by the fact that Miss Casey has disappeared.
Yeah.
But then there's the facade of Lumen. Like, there's so much. And we haven't even gotten to Cobell yet.
We haven't even talked. Yeah. Who knows what she's going to do, because every scene I see her in, she's flip-flopping between like supporting Lumen or being like, fuck Lumen.
Yeah.
Like literally is flip-flopping. And then we haven't even talked about the goats yet. What is with the goats, guys? What are her theories? She was incredible. I love her.
She's great. I love her too.
What do we think is with the goats?
I don't know. I think that, well, do you have anything on the goats?
I do think that it is some sort of I know it is not cloning, guys. Like, we read the comments. I get it. But I do think that, like, you see animals and you immediately think that, you know, they're testing on these animals. At least I do. I think that it's some sort of thing like that. If it isn't that, then I don't know. I immediately think of like goat milk. And like, I don't know. Milk could, like, maybe they're giving milk to the children that they're also raising up, because I believe that the one girl in the office is still they raised. I don't know, guys. I don't.
I don't know if I'm on the bandwagon of the milk. What do you have, DJ?
All right, so to be quite honest with you, I didn't think much about the goats besides the cloning. First of all, whoever's writing the comments, I don't give a shit what these people said in an interview. It's called fucking lying. So they easily could be lying about the cloning. Yeah. That's still my inkling. Is that
that the cast is lying about?
Yes, 100%. Okay. Like, it's promotional material.
Okay.
So I think that there's still a good chance that it's cloning. I do think that a big part of what we discussed, I think it was last week, about how Cold Harbor in general it's basically like a experimentation for the first time, to our knowledge, of a larger scale of trying to get the emotional attachment and memories through a human being. Mm-hmm. I think they might have done that first with the goats.
Okay.
There's a possibility, because you see certain times, like, I mean, I don't have a goat as a pet, but it's like, I think about like dogs, right? And like how dogs have these like emotional attachments to humans, and if they're like apart from them for such a long time, or even emotional connections they form with other animals and all these things, I think that could have been the first test subject, and then they're doing something else now. Like, they're continuously using them as experimentation. I still think the cloning is the thing, and my biggest standout still to this was the fact that I said this last week. There's a hellish connection to what's happening. Because they literally, like, again, like a goat, like they have the goat man who has like this, he's hidden in this giant goat outfit that resembles like satanic rituals. Like, I still think there is something that has to do with that overall, they're trying to do something for the betterment of mankind, and Severance is supposed to represent hell. Like, what the work world is representative of like how some people view work as hell. I think that has something to do with it. I don't know if we're going to get an answer to it. I don't know if it's strictly symbolic. But I know that in ancient literature, like, goats often lead to satanic rituals and cultish type things.
Okay.
So I'm still on that bandwagon, and it definitely feels like the goat crew, so to speak, they're their own cult within it. You know what I mean? Like, they say they want to see their pouches. They want to see their fucking belly buttons. Like, there's weird shit involved with what's happening. I don't have a theory on it fully formed out.
You didn't think that it was just more of like a funny line? You think that they actually were like, what are they expecting to see?
I don't know.
Well, in season 1,
Bird says something,
right?
Yeah. I think, I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure he was like, oh, the other people think that you guys have like pouches.
Yeah.
But I'm not fully on the bandwagon of like hell. I could see it, but when I'm watching it, I don't really resonate with like those moments. Like for me, the whole guy in the goat thing was just because that's his job, and like he's supposed to live amongst the goats and like, I don't know, be like one of them to figure out like their behavior. And the only way that an animal is truly
it could be
like
both.
Natural in its like habitat is if it feels like it's surrounded by its people. I was on the bandwagon of cloning, but I'm kind of off of it after this episode because I just don't know if it's necessarily like cloning to have multiple of something. I think that it more has to do with like immortality. And so I feel like maybe they're killing the goats and then trying to bring them back to life, or like severely injuring them and then trying to figure out, okay, how can we save them from dying to make them immortal, which also then relates to the Miss Casey thing, because then if she died, but then they brought her back to life, that would be like the first test on a human, which I feel like all they're doing all of this just to get back their like Lord and Savior of what's his name? Kier to come back to life.
I can actually stand behind that as far as the immortality and bringing them back to life, and especially bringing in Miss Casey, because, and this was something I wanted to ask you guys. Also, I will say before I ask you guys this question, this was the most cultish, I will say. Like, you're right, I didn't think about it like that, but him wearing the goat outfit is like pretty satanic.
Also, why would you could use Liz, you could use any fucking animal. Why do you choose goats? It literally is symbolic for Satan. Like
I don't know. They're used to be they're tested on. They're tested on. They're like used to be tested on. I don't know.
But yeah,
they're cute.
Yeah, they are. But to the Miss Casey point, and I wanted to ask you guys. I can see this being something between Miss Casey and her being such like an important figure within this all. And how did you guys feel about the moment when Mark was just finally like listen, like if you lost somebody or if you lost some like a pet, or your goats, you would go try and chase it or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then they admitted that they all knew her and that they had like these moments with her. And I feel like that's why I feel like that could be backed up, because if they are using these goats for an immortal sort of testing purpose, and then they did it on Miss Casey and they know her, she had to have been there and she had to have undergone or worked with him in some way.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, Liz. I do.
Yeah, I don't know cloning, but I definitely think that they're trying to keep people from dying or just like keep them living forever and ever. I'm away from the cloning, so commenters, you got me. I'm not on a cloning vibe anymore.
I still think, I think that's fair. I mean, there's so much still to even figure out with Miss Casey and what's to come with that. I mean, now it's confirmed by Ragabi that she's alive, and there's just so much with this show. There's so much to weigh and so much to think about. Just because we didn't touch a lot on Cobell really quick. I agree. Like, so much of what you were saying is that we've seen, like, the episode opens with her. She had
driving.
Had driven so far, like, slept in her car overnight, was still driving one way, and then she just decides, nope, I got to turn back around. Mm-hmm. And she turns back around, and then obviously she had an idea that she couldn't trust Lumen in that moment.
Well, because Helena says, didn't she say, like, let's take a reset or let's reset?
I don't know exactly what the term.
I'm like 90% sure she says, why don't we reset and let's see if the board's available. And part of me was like, are they going to reset like Cobell, or is that just term for like take a break? But then it got me thinking, like, if all of these employees have chips in them, Cobell probably has a chip in her too. that they can keep track of. And then what? Are they able to just reset their employees' memories?
Says some viewers have theorized Cobell's fear had more to do with the keyword reset. Helena talks about resetting things before offering Cobell the opportunity to meet the board. Yeah, it might have to do with giving Cobell's memories a complete wipe.
And she
and
knows
it says
that?
Cobell probably realizes what they're about to do with her, prompting her off. One of the either a producer or a writer said that she gets the sense that it's a trap.
Mm-hmm. I did. I was like, girl, don't go in there. Don't, you know too much.
Yeah.
So then if you were to bring that up, then can't you say, like, I get to be severed is to have an innie-outie sort of split duplicated thing, but if they're all in some way have a chip in them that can easily be manipulated or affected in any way, aren't they all severed then to a degree? You know,
not necessarily, because severed means there's literally like being split into two.
It has to be. Okay, got you.
Cobell has the same like memories and brain, but I think that all Lumen employees are chipped.
Okay.
I just don't know what chipping means. Like, is it that it's only location based, or is it that they can also know your thoughts?
Okay.
She's also like one of the biggest praisers of Kier.
Yeah.
And then she burns everything down in the finale, I think, right? Of season 1. She has like a whole shrine dedicated to him, but I think she burns it down.
She's a wild card.
You
don't know you don't know which way she's.
You got Patricia Arquette in your show.
Oof.
She's a crazy one. She's a great actress.
She's
though.
Scary.
Anything else on Irv? Because we don't get a lot from him except for.
No, I think his character is just going to be I think there's going to be an episode that all of a sudden we learn a ton about him.
I agree.
I did see one theory online where they talked about like a revolution kind of happened a while ago, right? With severed people where they tried to break through, and people think that Irv was in that first revolution. So I saw that theory. That would be cool, which would lead to also why he's trying to hunt everybody down in the outside world.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
And so maybe that's why he's seen the hallway.
Ooh, and there was like a war connotation in his thing. So maybe not war, but revolution.
Yeah. And maybe that's why he draws the hallway, because that was the route that they were to like escape.
That's interesting. I think it's interesting too how they talk about how Lumen is very particular with how they place like artwork throughout the building and things like that. And it's like they still want to talk about their, like, again, you look at something as little as the premiere episode when they have like, they make up that whole video where it's like, this is historical about what happened when these 4 employees had an uprising. And I think that displaying their history is important to the cause. And I think that definitely can have something to do with it as well. There's also a fucking goat in one of the revolutionary pictures. It's a goat person. So I'm sticking with the hell theory. It's on my theory.
I'm not on it. I think that they just are good.
You'll see, Liz. Is there anything else?
There was one little detail with Irv that I noticed. I don't know if you guys caught it, but I thought it was just, it adds to this whole, he definitely knows that something's up with Helly, or maybe there was something that happened there. There was like a moment right before they all broke off in this episode where I forget what Irv was doing, but you see Helena like kind of like comfort Irv and like put her arm on, like, oh, you know, like we're still at it. And if you watch him for this like a split second before he's like, oh, thank you, he looks at her like, he gives her like a really like almost like I don't know if I trust you sort of face. And it was something that I didn't catch first watch. It was something actually I saw like on social media. And so just a little detail that I noticed in this episode that is furthermore pushing me to believe that he knows something about her character.
Yeah.
Well, he was also tipped off when they asked her what happened, and she was like, oh, I saw the gardener. And he was like,
the only one that thought about
night?
it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A
He's
night
like,
gardener?
that's weird.
And I think part of it was because she says, we've got you, when she touches his hand. But I think it's also that, like, I don't know if Helly had ever done that before. Like, even touched Irv. Like, I don't know.
I don't think they had like a lot of camaraderie between each other, right? It was
they didn't dislike each other, but it was like they didn't have that relationship. And he's like, that's interesting. We didn't have that relationship before. So
I don't know.
There's a lot to think about. Excited for episode 4. That has been our coverage on episode 3 of Severance. What's it called? Who is Alive is the name of the episode. By the way, if you guys don't want to know, all the titles for the whole season are up. So if you don't want to know anything, don't look at the titles. If you want to continue to theorize, look at the titles. But that has been our review and discussion of the episode. Let us know in the comments, what do you guys think about the episode? What are your theories going forward with literally all the characters? Everybody has their moment to shine in this week's episode, definitely going forward, whether it's Irv or Dylan or Mark or Helly or Milchick or Natalie. We also didn't even get to the Rickon part where they're manipulating him on the outside to try to get a book deal for innies, which is a very interesting thing. And how Persephone has clearly doesn't agree with that and what's to come with that. But we'll see what happens with that. Be sure to give this video a like if you guys can and subscribe to us here at the Culture Wave Media Network. We're covering Severance for the next 7 weeks after this until the end of the season, so be sure to join us on that ride. And if you guys want to follow us on all our social media, all that stuff is below me in the video currently and also linked in our description. Just signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
I am Liz Seiko.
And I'm Michael Peniston.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.